My name is Lonnie Bunkley, and I'm the author of the book Journey to Freedom, which was published last year. And I'm here in the Jamboree because I want to share some of this information. Well, I've always been interested in history, but two or three things happened about the same time. I became aware of a court case that I looked at, and I read all the documents related to it and found out that as I read the documents, there was a serious discussion about a slave owner trying to recoup $3,000 because another slave owner had killed his slave. And what struck me was that at no time in this writing did they ever mention the fact that a human being had been killed. The only thing that referenced the whole killing was whether or not he was liable for the $3,000 that the suit was trying to collect. About that, also, I found a will that, as I began tracing it, one of the earliest things that I located was a will dated 1778, and it showed the transfer of property from one generation to the next generation, and named in that were members of my family. And that's when I really became interested to be able to. So I went from 1778 and traced my family from North Carolina to Georgia to Alabama. It was in Alabama that the Civil War and Reconstruction, that my family was located there. After that, my grandfather came to Texas, and that's where I was born and lived my childhood. Well, court records are very valuable because they have names and details and dates and exactly what you're looking for. So I would spend some time looking at court records in old courthouses. Very often these courthouses have been burned down and you may not find it right away, but that's a very, very good source. And any local documents, you mentioned the wills, but there are also Bibles and other family documents where they really just transacted their business being slave ownership. And they call names and say how much they paid and how they utilized them. So I would use those personal records, court records, and I think you'll find a lot. So I really do think there's a lot of documentation of Black family life, but it just has not been researched very much. And we're just beginning to acknowledge the existence of some of the activities that took place during those time periods. I think the first interesting and very exciting group that I talked with was my family, because they didn't know a lot, just like I had not known before I got into it. So the first thing I did was send copies to my family. Since then, I've gone to Amazon and places like that, so the sales have been reasonably good for genealogy. And I'm very proud of the fact that so many people are discovering for the first time history as it really took place. And because when you start putting down names and dates and death dates and things of that sort, it's real. And I'm very proud of the fact that it's a very real story about the true history of a group of African Americans. I think of my grandfather. Well, I think of my parents, first of all, because I really knew them and we were a very close family. But one of the stories is about my grandfather who after Reconstruction, he came with the previous slave owner to Texas, Smith County, Texas. And one day my grandmother was washing her clothes and she had hung the clothes on the line to dry. And the neighbor's cow came into the yard, knocked the clothes to the ground, and she tried to chase the cow out. The next door neighbor, who was white, saw this and came and literally attacked her, knocked her down. My grandfather saw this and he went to protect her, and he chased this man out of his yard and dared him to come back. But so he had a victory. But the reality of that victory was that he knew he had to go. So there's a paragraph or two in the book entitled Between Sons. And the story as it's been told down through generations is that Papa had to leave between sons. Means that my grandfather had to leave at sundown, and he had to be out of the area by sunrise, because he knew if he stayed there another night that he would be killed. So he ran from Smith County to Bonham, Texas, which is Fannin County, and that's where my father was born, and that's where the family grew up for a while. So that kind of stuck to me as a story that really talked about how my family had been through some struggles, many, and that one is one of the special ones. You can't really appreciate who you are until you understand the background and who your family is. And we've always had a very close family. And as I looked at some of the older documents, I think that was true when they were in Alabama too. It just, in the block where I grew up, there were 4 houses, and we were all relatives, and we were all kind of centered around my grandparents. And I think that it's just so important for history to be told correctly. So much of it is never mentioned. It's just as if it didn't happen. And I think we need to know about certain things. I was just talking to the lady about Civil War soldiers, black Civil War soldiers. But if you stop 10 people and ask them about the role of the black soldier in Civil War, they wouldn't know. And we need to know for sure that we fought for our freedom. And I think most history books, I know the ones that I received when I was in school, made it sound like our freedom was a gift and that somebody just gave it to us. We fought for it, and we're still fighting today for it, because in my judgment, freedom is not available when you have some with special privileges and some don't have privileges. And until we equalize the opportunities, we've got a long ways to go.